Welcoming Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, host of From Chaos to Connection, growing from pain toward community. Are you ready to make the most of your challenges while moving ahead with your dreams? Do you want your spiritual growth to be part of your healing while living your life with purpose? On Chaos to Connection, you will find resources to transform your difficulties into connections with others. Change is achievable. Dr. Ellie helps you make change both within and in the world. Learn to heal past traumas, become more self-assured, and take action in the world. No matter your spiritual background or cultural heritage, we will work together to transform pain and trauma to community and well-being. You can make this world a better place, starting with yourself. From Chaos to Connection starts now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, and this is my show From Chaos to Connection. If you're interested in personal growth and building better relationships at home and in the world, then you're definitely in the right place. This is our third episode, and today I would like to talk to you about building better relationships at home. But rather than take the whole time to talk, I thought it would be nice for us to connect and chat a little bit online while I'm here live. So I hope you have your cup of tea or coffee near you and you're ready to jump in and have a nice chat with me. Please feel free to do that either with your questions or to just introduce yourself and say hi and where you're calling from, and ask anything that you're curious about relationships, and I will be happy to respond. My goal is to make these podcasts more interactive, so I really want to encourage you to take advantage of us being together on this platform every other week for half an hour. I do know that many of you can't be online because of the time zone difference, but you can always write your comments or questions in the chat box and I will respond at a later time. So, as a relationship counselor and coach, I have spent the majority of my adult life studying relationships. In fact, my fascination with understanding people and why they behave the way they do started way back in my childhood. If you remember, I had mentioned that I was born in Tehran, Iran, close to the onset of the 1979 revolution. And being a religious minority in a country that was going through a religious revolution taught me a lot about human interaction and behavior. I was always very curious and wanted to know what factors contribute to people having conflict with each other. I must have been about 6 or 7 years old when I decided to set out to learn more about people and their relationships. Today, some 40 years later, as a relationship coach, many of my learnings have come from these early childhood experiences. And I'm proud to say that as a result, I have accumulated a very diverse practice. I work with people from many different cultures, ethnicities, religions, and socioeconomic backgrounds. And I love learning from them as much as I enjoy being a counselor for them. People have such amazingly rich lives and are often quite complex. As I'm sure you know, what we generally see on the outside about people has very little to do with what they're feeling or experiencing on the inside or behind closed doors. So I always feel very privileged to have the chance and the opportunity to engage with people with so much candor and openness and trust. And as a counselor, you learn very early on to not judge people for their choices or the experiences that they have lived through, because we all know life is full of challenges and making mistakes is a big part of the learning process. In fact, I love the saying that mistakes are God's way of showing us the right path. How else would we learn, right? Also, when you don't judge people, you're free to just be with them and share in their deepest joys, their sorrows, and their fears in life. And you get to have the privilege of watching them grow over time and become stronger, healthier, and more successful individuals. So for me, there is a great deal of joy in being a counselor. And my hope for creating these podcasts is to help more people like yourselves engage more authentically and to learn about human interaction and develop more constructive tools to manage and solve difficulties in life. I think you would agree that we could all use such a space where we can come together, listen, learn, and apply these skills to our own life and grow without having to worry about being judged. In our humanity, we are actually a lot more alike than different. And I hope that over time, these podcasts will help you see and feel more comfortable and secure in engaging more openly and freely with each other. Okay, so what I have come to see and learn throughout all these years of study, practice, and experience with people from all over the world is that most people are not born knowing how to have good relationships. With the exception of a few people, most of us growing up did not have positive role models when it came to building better relationships at home or out in the world. We can just look to our parents, our teachers, our community elders and leaders, and maybe if we're lucky, we can point to one or two people we know who is a true leader of love and light and say, yes, I admire this individual and I want to model my life after them. You're very lucky if you have individuals in your life that you can do that with. Instead, most of us have to work very hard at developing the right skills before we can actually enjoy the fruits of being in a healthy, loving, and caring relationship. Today, I like to share a skill set that I think will be helpful to people and leave the rest of the time open so we can say hello and I can answer any of your questions. I feel that this is the right place for more engagement and dialogue between us. But if you end up seeing the recording of this talk later and have questions, again, you can always privately message me and I'll be happy to respond. Well, much like religion, it's true that people rarely seek counseling when they're doing well in life or are happy in their relationships. Although this is changing with the millennial generation, I'm happy to say that many young people come into counseling these days, not because they are having difficulty, but because they want to keep improving and building on what they already have. I like to compare it to building wealth. You start with a little seed money and then you invest it and capitalize on it. Many young people understand this concept well and apply it to their romantic relationships as well. That really sets them up for success early on in their life, as opposed to waiting for a decade or so when they're in hot water and then seeking counseling. When resources are scarce or limited or even dwindling, it's much harder to build wealth, right? We all know that. The same is true for emotional wealth. When you are at rock bottom or at zero, or even at a negative in your marriage or partnership, it's much harder to bring it to a positive or loving space than if you come in with more reserves. Still, we all want happiness and love in life, even when we haven't invested much in our emotional wealth. We still long for it. That's just human nature. It's like living in poverty, but wishing that someday you could win the lottery, right? We all want that. Well, in reality, that's not how it works. For most of us, building wealth takes a lot of time, skill, hard work, and investment. And the same is true for relationship wealth. You can't just expect to have an extraordinary marriage without having invested a lot initially in learning how to build emotional wealth. So typically when a couple comes in for counseling and they're having difficulty in their relationship, they usually come in with a whole laundry list of issues that is wrong with their partner. I often hear the words, Dr. Ellie, only if he would, or Dr. Ellie, only if she could, right? It's most often what's wrong with the other person, and rarely ever does the individual look at themselves and what it is that they're doing, or what it is that they're contributing that's creating difficulty in their relationship. No one really ever says, Dr. Ellie, if only I would, or I could change such and such behavior about myself. It's never like that. Rather, the focus is always on the other. Well, I call this as having a lack of emotional maturity. Not to put down or trivialize the difficulties that couples have, but lack of emotional maturity is the crux of it. And it always reminds me of when my children were younger and they would fight and argue all the time. I would be called into their room in their hour of despair to try and help solve the issues between them. They would fight and argue like cats and dogs because they wanted what they wanted, as they wanted it, when they wanted it, and neither one had any inclination to hear what the other sibling wanted, and God forbid if they had to share or compromise over a toy. That was just World War III. As a parent, I spent many years teaching them about becoming emotionally responsible individuals. And believe me, it was not an easy task. I don't want to say that my adult couples are like my children, but well, initially there's a lot of similarities when they first come in and start working. I have to teach them how to listen to each other, how to validate their partner, how to give constructive criticism while focusing them on the success of the relationship rather than their individual needs and wants. That's a big task. What I have found is that the recipe for disaster in any relationship, and that includes personal relationships, work relationships, family and community relationships, is if everyone wants what they want all the time, then nobody is going to get anything, even some of the time. I'll repeat that. If everyone wants what they want all the time, then nobody is going to get anything, even some of the time. So, what do I do to set my couples up for success? Initially, there's a lot of educating around the rules of engagement and to help them shift their thinking from what's in it for me or what it is that I'm not getting to how am I falling short from my partner, or what is it that I'm doing or not doing that's hurting my partner. Emily, I'm going to continue and then I'll let you know when we're going to take a break. Okay, moving on. So it's a complete shift in the way couples think when they come in. It takes a while to cultivate this new way of thinking. It's really the opposite, right? But this is how we invest in our emotional bank account. We deposit wealth initially, emotional wealth, we deposit. We don't take or we don't keep withdrawing from the bank account, especially if there are no reserves or savings. Same is true with emotional relationships. We don't just keep taking and taking when there's nothing there to take from. So it's clear that if you're having these difficulties in your own life and you look back to your own childhood, chances are that you probably did not learn any of this growing up in your household. And that's very common. Most of us didn't. Many parents are not emotionally well equipped before they have children. And so it's no wonder that many of us are lacking in emotional wealth. So much of this early work in relationship building is to help people reimagine how they want to see themselves and operate from the way they've been taught early on with respect to relationships. Okay, so we're going to take a little break here, and I'm going to see if there are any comments or questions that I can come back to address. So feel free to write to me right now And after the break, I will answer your questions. See you soon. Okay, welcome back. This is the second half of our talk today. And I have a couple of questions that were put out to me here. Thank you for the questions. And, I do realize that this is a very broad topic, and there's so much to be said. Today, I'm just going to focus on building relationships at home. But in future topics, I will also consider talking about relationships out in the work environment and also out in the community. It really depends on your interest. If you want to hear about a certain particular area, let me know. And of course, I will address what your interests are. But for today, I'm just going to stay with building better relationships in the home. So I had a question here, and this is a very common issue that couples who've been together for a long time come in, and this is what it sounds like. I feel so unappreciated in my marriage. I work so hard for the family and never feel appreciated. Dr. Ellie, how do I tell my partner that I'm feeling unappreciated without creating a fight? Okay, so this is, again, very common. Both men and women who've, of course, in a heterosexual relationship, when they come in and they've been together for a long time, they both feel very underappreciated. And they want a lot more from their partner and they're not getting it. Okay, so this is exactly the example of what I was referring to. When a couple comes in and they are at an all-time low, maybe even a negative in their connection, it's impossible to withdraw from the relationship. So, of course, you have every need, and it's absolutely right that you want more from your marriage or your partnership. But when the relationship is at an all-time low, you can't really withdraw anything. You can't really turn to your partner and say, give me more, when there's nothing there in the reserves. Okay. So this is what I was referring to, is that we can't come in initially and start asking for what we want. The relationship is built on all the reserves that we've put in, and then we can withdraw. So rather than focus on what it is that you're not getting, which is appreciation in this scenario, you have to be willing to put appreciation into the relationship before you can withdraw appreciation from the relationship. So I turn usually to the partner and I say, well, if you're not getting it, chances are your partner's not getting it either. What are you doing to be offering that to your partner? And of course, they often pause and they say, well, I work night and day and bring money and, put food on the table. Yes. And the other partner says, well, I work hard too. I take care of the household and I also work outside the home and I take care of the kids too. And so back and forth they go about how they're doing a lot, but they're not getting. And again, the focus is not in the right direction. Everybody's always doing everything. Of course, when you're living together, you're working, you're taking care of tasks, chores, kids' needs, etc. But the focus should be on what is it that I need to give to my partner to make their life easier or better, even if it's just for today, right? So we put your needs and wants aside and we focus on what it is that you can give, you can put into the bank account of the relationship. And of course, both individuals have to do that. For a while, I just focus them on giving, not taking. Once we build up the reserves, then gradually we can turn to, okay, now let's withdraw and see what you can take for you and have some of those needs be met. Okay, so that was one of the questions that were asked. And let's see, we have a couple more minutes and I'll jump into the second question. This is also a very familiar question. I get this a lot. Whenever we go to a family gathering, my partner wants to leave early and I want to stay longer. We always end up arguing. How do we solve this issue? Okay. People are different, right? There's no right and wrong. People who are more extroverted love going to gatherings. They get a lot of energy from being around friends and family. They want to stay longer. They want to schmooze. That's how they get their fix. And those who are more introverted are the opposite. For them, it's a lot of work to be around people, family, friends. They can only maybe do an hour or two at most, and then they have to go home to recharge. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. So we just want to accept and acknowledge our partner's temperament, and we want to have a plan in place. So I tell my couple, okay, so let's have a plan in place in terms of going to events and parties. One of you for sure is going to want to stay. The other wants to go home. How do you want to deal with this? Do you want to take 2 cars? Do you want to agree that you leave earlier? Do you want to agree that the one who wants to leave will stay an extra hour for the other? So we just talk it through and come up with a game plan. Once that's in place, then we move forward with it. And then we don't have to argue every time we're at a party. Okay. So I think that's a good place for us to pause. This episode was about building better relationships at home. I hope you've enjoyed it and that you will tune in 2 weeks for our 4th episode. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarrabian. This is the Transformation Network, from chaos to connection. Take care and see you in a couple of weeks.
You have been listening to Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, host of From Chaos to Connection. Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more resources and tools to help with healing on your journey of life. You can impact the globe in the most powerful way possible. Whatever your spiritual background and cultural heritage is, you can transform pain and trauma into building community and connection. Join Dr. Ellie in identifying what you need to heal within and in our world. For more information, visit centeronpeace.com. That's centeronpeace.com.